I think it might have been People magazine or Newsweek. It was a cover, within a week after the tragedy. And here I caught this guy. I actually have him in this account. He stopped there on the ramp and got out, and he took that photo. I actually have him in this account taking this photo that I saw on this magazine cover. Really awesome.
And let me just say this, folks. Eventually, Jim understands what's going on here, and he starts to. And I mean, this is the way I was as well, because I had no idea what was going on, and I was across the river about 12 miles away. But when you pull back again, and you go down, you pan down to a street, and here we have a peaceful cemetery with some graves marked with an American flag. You have people walking up and down, actually pretty happy because it was a spanking beautiful day. And they're underneath, tree-covered, they're walking down tree-covered streets as I was with no clue. But I was, 12 miles north. What you're doing is you're showing people who are directly west of the event and have no idea what's going on. And then you pan back to the pandemonium, and then you pull back and you go down again, and here's the peaceful cemetery, American flags, people having a great walk out there, on a beautiful cerulean sky, not even a fall day. It's still, obviously, September 11th is still summer. And you're right. And you said they have no idea what's going on.
Keith, I can even punctuate that with my wife. She's there 2 blocks away from the Empire State Building. And I call her, I'm doing my best with whatever influence and power, whatever, as her husband. I'm trying to get her to come home because I knew everything was going to shut down, and I didn't know how she was going to get out of there. She didn't even know what was going on. No one in her office knew. They had to send someone out, one of their colleagues, to buy a television set just to know what was happening. They had no idea. There were people around the world that knew a heck of a lot more about what was going on there than somebody that was right there in the city.
Yeah, and I mean, folks, I want to let you know something. Ann and Jim are Bible-believing Christians. Back when this was shot, Jim was not. But even if he wasn't, you cannot, there's language in this, understand that. But this is the way it is. I mean, this is right out of the box, no milk or sugar added. This is raw footage. And part of this whole thing, too, is your conjecturing, sometimes perhaps incorrectly, sometimes correctly. Sometimes we'll never know exactly if you were right or not for whatever happened over there. But your commentary is there, and it's real. And it goes on for 2 hours, and I have to admit, when I first started watching this, because I've pretty much been through this, for 8 years when I was doing the radio show. But I'm like, okay, this is going to be painful, and it wasn't, because I caught myself watching it and then looking down at the time, and I'm like, an hour went by, and then an hour and a half went by, and so you do get caught, you get pulled into it because you're not dealing with some kind of talking head narrative, you're not dealing with charts and all this stuff. It is just, this is for as far as you're concerned. I think I can say this, though it's taped, and though it was almost 10 years ago. When you watch it, it's a live event. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's something that, when we started this project, we started contacting individuals through the internet, through message boards, forums. One thing that I got from somebody is that they're telling me about their account of the day and how they first found out about it, and just what happened for them on that day. There's one guy that he was... I don't know what year he was in, but he was in college, and he said he woke up on Tuesday morning, and he woke up, heard something about, New York towers, plane crash. He was like all just confused, and he turned on the TV, saw I guess, what is it, the North Tower was struck first?
That's correct, yep. Mm-hmm.
And then he was watching the North Tower on fire. He's watching it, and the second plane hits the South Tower, live, before his eyes. And what he said to me is that he thought he was watching a replay. Now, how are you supposed to, now that you heard that, how are you supposed to believe that every time you see this footage, it's just pretty much it is happening. Because do you really know the difference when, you're talking about this guy, he just turned on the TV, watched it, and, I mean, if you can believe that was a replay, then you can believe that in your mind you could see a lot of things that are not really true, but you can almost conclude it to be true just because, no way, did I really just see that?
Exactly. I'm going to take a break in a second and see if we can pull Danny in. Okay. But I want to share something with you. I don't know if you heard the story or not. This comes to me from Barry Chamish, who listens to the show and other shows like mine. No, he's a prolific writer, a Canadian national who emigrated to Israel and now is back again. Barry shared something with me the last time he was on. And I don't know if you heard the story or not. And it comes from Barry, and it's anecdotal, but yeah, I believe it to be true. However, can you imagine this? And let me just share it with you real quick. Barry said to me that there was an individual who worked nights and lived down, I don't know if it was in Jersey or in Brooklyn, but was in visual sight lines with the towers, which have been outside his window for however long. And he goes to bed in darkness with the towers there, and you guess it, he woke up in the morning and they were gone, and he wigged out. Can you imagine? Have you ever heard of something like that?
No, okay, so you're saying he never got any wind of what was going on?
No, I mean, he was sound asleep and everything was fine. He pulls up the blinds and the towers are gone, and he freaked. Wow. And I must admit, whether that story is true or not, and if Barry said it, I mean, I believe he was not, just talking trash. He's not that kind of guy. But, what I thought about was how many people might have even been near that experience, even if there wasn't just that particular episode. And then I'm thinking, gee, how do I process this? Just like you had mentioned before on, and for other folks, can you imagine going to sleep, seeing the towers, waking up, they're gone?
Right.
Oh, can you only imagine? I mean, that's part of also the terror that, folks don't even realize. There's all that other residual, I don't even like calling it that. But how about the people who just went, what happened to? And I'll only tell you this. On Friday, the Friday after that Tuesday, I had the only flight released from Newark to Tampa. I drove down in the pre-dawn hours. And, of course, it's like looking at a fatal wreck on the highway. You don't want to look, but you look. And as we were traveling south down the turnpike, I looked over, and here we are, several days later, and there's a gap where the tower should be, and smoke still drifting up. And in that hour, without the sun, it was ghostly, if you can understand that. And I know I don't want to denigrate it by saying this, and understand what I mean on this, but it was like the skyline of New York was a smile. And when the towers weren't there, it was like two front teeth knocked out. Do you know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the eeriest thing I ever saw. And I tell you what, when I got to the airport, I didn't want to look over anymore. I wouldn't look. I went to the opposite side of the terminal. Most of us kidded each other, in a sense, nervously that, well, there's ever a safe time to fly, it's now. And here we are amongst all these SWAT teams, military, German shepherds all over the joint. And we were, mine was the only flight that was released that day. But I just want to share with you, too. I mean, when I went down and took a look over those friendly towers, which had been over my shoulder for most of my life because I grew up just across the river, were suddenly gone. And that wasn't making a whole lot of sense to me. At least, thank you guys for countenancing that little dialogue by me. Folks, we're going to take...
Thank you, Keith. Yeah, I mean, the account that people have and what they remember of that day and that whole time period, I think they don't put high in their level of importance. It's just almost like, oh, how can I possibly think that that's important when I'm watching this footage of people literally dying,
yep,
before my eyes, and that's what I mean is that's why when I looked at the towers burning, I didn't think about those towers burning. I didn't think about the plane crashes and the collapsing of the towers. I thought about my day there.
Mm-hmm. Right,
my
exactly.
day there.
And it's interesting too because all my life, my father taking me into New York City for whatever reasons, circuses and hockey games and all that stuff. He never had explained to me why the Empire State Building wasn't there anymore. You know what I mean? It's just a new era. All right, guys, hang with me. We're going to break for a second. When we come back, we're going to try to bring in an associate of both On and Jim, who saw it also, and they kind of ran it by him. I guess it was somewhat of a kind of a test run, and we want to get his take on it if we can. So, folks, you're listening to Think or Be Eaten, and we'll be back in a second with Jim and On, and hopefully with Danny Cannon. Be back in a second.
This program contains the truth and is void where prohibited, taxed, or otherwise restricted by law.
Okay, we took a little break. This is Think or Be Eaten, and we're talking with Jim and On, who are involved with Tuesday Morning in September.blogspot.com, and that's the site, one of the sites, which you can go to see some of the trailers of the DVD that was recorded as it happened back on 9/11/2001. And with us now is Danny Cannon, who is, I could say, an associate of On's and Jim's, and he's another individual to whom they showed the that video that day, that 2-hour video. Let me ask you this, Dan. You were down in Georgia at the time, right?
That's right.
Okay. Now, I guess you're working or whatever's going on that day. Can you just give us a little thumbnail about what that day was like and when you realized something very awful was happening in the Northeast?
Well, yeah, I was working like everybody else, just a normal day. I actually worked in a manufacturing plant at that time here in Gainesville, Georgia, and I just happened to be up at the main office, and they had a TV on up there, and they told me what had just started happening, and I actually started looking at the footage along about the time that second plane hit, and it was just total devastation. I guess everybody remembers where they were at that day. Mm-hmm. It's a place that carved a little notch in your heart you never get rid of. But it was everybody started trying to guess what would happen next, and that sort of thing, kind of like everybody else, I guess. But it was definitely a day that I'll never forget.
Unlike yourself, I was oblivious to what was going on. I didn't find out till 2:30. I was actually just across the river walking around visiting my old neighborhood. And then finally at 2:30 I went to visit somebody, and they said to me, "Isn't it awful?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So in a way I was spared the running account that many of you had seen. Now I'm going to ask you, you're at a place of business, but how could you all conduct yourselves? I mean, was there a radio on? Did people sneak into the break room and take a look at the TV? I mean, how'd you all handle it?
Well, yeah, and I was in management at that plant, and I was in a position I could just stop and look at it. And then we did set up another TV where some of the employees out in the plant could come and see, because everybody was coming and asking questions. And we set up something in the break room where everybody could get a glimpse at it and hear the news as they were coming in and out with their breaks. And because everybody was extremely interested in what was going on, as you know. Mm-hmm. It was kind of hard. One of those days you just couldn't keep people from running in and out asking questions, so you just went ahead and fixed it where everybody could get at the news,
Not to go on about it, but was anybody that you knew in the facility, did any of them have any kind of relatives or friends up there?
Well, there's a young lady worked in our office is from that area, and she knew a lot of people that were possibly in there. Of course, she was very concerned, but I personally didn't know anybody that was from that area at that time.
Now, you saw all the video reportage that has taken place, and now I guess perhaps sometime this year, if I have it correctly, you'll tell me, that Jim and On approach you, and what do? They say, "Do you want to take a look at this?"
That's right. Jim actually approached me, told me, just gave me a little bit of an overview of what he had done, and I said, "Well, I'd love to see that." But actually, to be honest with you, I said, big deal. When he told me what I was going to be looking at it, I said, I've seen all this footage 100 times, I'm sure. But, for some reason, I told Jim I would take a look at it, and I sat down that night with my wife, and it didn't take me but just a couple of minutes to see that I hadn't seen this. And what I saw, I'm not talking about just raw footage, the world's full of it, but what I saw was 9/11 through the eyes of an American.